Good morning, members, of the public, and for those members and officers online. Welcome to the Grants Committee meeting, Advisory Committee meeting. Today, 28th of October, I think you said 29th, 28th of October, 22. Got a nice agenda, some great interest. Just going to go through the normal bits and pieces. Apologies for absence, please, Kira.
Yep, Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Judith Rippeth with Councillor Peter Sandford sitting as a sub and Councillor Bill Hanley with Councillor Martin Khan sitting as a sub.
Thank you very much. And members, any declarations of interest with any of the items on the agenda, please? That's a no. And okay, we're going to go through the minutes of the last meeting, if I may. So do the usual page 1. Just sing out if you... It's not there actually, isn't it? No, I just thought that was missing earlier. Right, okay. Have we got any minutes of the last meeting?
They're all online.
No? Okay. Take that as read. They're in the ether somewhere. We know they are. I remember being here anyway. So, we were all here. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Moving on then. Okay, this agenda item number 4, electric vehicle charge point grant scheme. This is page 1 to 12 on your agenda. And who's doing this? Is this you, Siobhan?
This is me, yes. Thanks, Chair. It's Luke Waddington sent his apologies. He's not able to be here. He wrote the report, but I'm very happy to present it.
Thank you very much. Over to you then. Could you,
okay, so,
would you mind, Siobhan, sorry, you're very, very faint. Would you come closer to your mic if possible?
Yeah, is that better?
That's perfect, thank you.
Okay, right, yes. So I won't go through all the details contained in the report circulated, but in summary, the Grants Advisory Committee is asked to recommend to the lead Cabinet Member for Finance that we proceed to set up a new grant scheme open to applications from parish councils and operators of community buildings for sums of up to £5,000 for the purpose of installing publicly accessible electric vehicle charging points. So a little background, there is up to around £25,000 in the current year's budget for this scheme from a total of £150,000, which was allocated for the general purpose of encouraging the expansion of EV charging points, and which we've used for various rapid chargers. Now, if the scheme was to prove popular, there are a few possibilities as to how we could fund it beyond the current year, and we would look at these. So you can see the proposed application form and guidance notes in the appendices. Luke leads on EV charging matters, and he will also be leading on publicising the grant and supporting parish councils and community groups so they feel confident as to what is a suitable location for these and how to deliver them. I think I'll leave it at that, but very happy to take any questions, of course.
Thanks, Siobhan. Colleagues, any questions for Siobhan? Or indeed that matter, lead member for finance? Okay, so Sue Ellen,
yeah.
Please.
I'm somewhat naive about things like electric charging points. So can I have just a little bit of detail to understand him? Do you have to get an electricity provider's consent for this sort of thing? There's 3 questions here I've got. Is there a need for a legal agreement to put the point in against a public building? And how do you actually pay? Is it by card to the provider of the electricity, or would it have to go through, say, the parish council if it was a parish council building? Those are the sort of detail I was
let me see if I can answer these in turn. So the kind of charges that we expect parish councils to apply for are the ones that are known as fast charges, that is fast as compared to the much faster ones. So although they're faster than just plugging in your car at home to a normal electrical point, then they're not that fast. And you wouldn't, in that case, need to do anything particular with the electricity. You wouldn't need you wouldn't need extra electricity. I think I'm using very untechnical terms, but I think you know what I mean. You wouldn't need a legal agreement to put the charge point in. The way that they usually work is that in terms of payment, there is set up with a payment scheme so that users of the charge point use usually through a phone app. It's done in a way which takes the cost of the electricity, that takes what they're paying automatically. So then that money is then provided to the parish council, minus some admin fees. I feel like I'm not explaining it brilliantly, but it's set up in a way so that the parish councils would be looking to cover their costs of providing electricity. Does that answer your questions?
It starts to be on the road of understanding where we're going. Yep.
Thanks, Siobhan. I think we threw you in the deep end there, didn't we?
Slightly.
So what we'll try and do for the rest of the meeting, but on this side especially, is we'll find some really serious questions that you're gonna hate us for. Right. And hopefully Peter's got one. Peter Sanford.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Following on from Councillor Ellington's question and Sean's explanation, I don't think any of my parish councils will know where to start with procuring a charging point. I think we're going to have to play dating agency between the parish councils and trusted partners who can advise them. So whether that needs to be factored into the cost or whether the providers will do that as part of the service, presumably taking a percentage of the revenues further down the road. But
yes, I mean, it's probably worth mentioning that we have a couple of parish councils who are sort of well on the way to getting these, and it is, as you say, it's a question of getting a provider of the charge point who then kind of arranges all of the payment system and the kind of electrical connection and does the whole thing as a package. And we are very aware that support for understanding what is involved will be essential. And so I know Luke is thinking in terms of, he's already organised one webinar, which was back in March as part of our Climate and Environment Fortnight, but he's thinking towards organising another session so that it'll be able to, so that the process will be able to be clearly explained and people will be able to ask any questions.
thank you.
Thanks, Siobhan. John, I think you put your hand up and then down again. Did you want to come in on this?
Yes, thank you. Two things. First of all, a slight amendment. Can we include town councils in the report as well as parish councils? You only refer to parish councils, so can we make sure that we ensure that it's town councils as well? I think this is an excellent idea. I think people seem to forget. I think most people will think when they think of EV charging points in villages, they think that it's mainly for visitors. But actually, an awful lot of people who live in villages don't have driveways, don't have the ability to charge their vehicle at home. And therefore, I see these EV charging points as really being very important to those who live in properties where they can't charge their vehicle, and this gives them an opportunity to be able to charge their vehicle. So it's not just for visitors, and I hope parish councils will bear that in mind when they consider such a scheme. So no, I'm very fully supportive of this, and I hope the committee agrees with me.
Thank you, John. Siobhan, I have a question which I hope won't be horrible. How long, on average, do you think it takes to charge a car from one of the, they're not the Ultra, as you say, and I'm looking at probably a colleague here, right, Jeff, who might well answer this question. How long does it take on average to charge the average car, shall we say? And what happens if you stay on the plugged in and walk away and leave it longer than what it was charged for? Thanks.
So, and I'm looking through the report to see if Luke gave this particular detail. I think it is about sort of 6 hours, that kind of length of time. It does depend upon the car. It's certainly a reasonable length of time for a full charge. But if you were to plug it in for a couple of hours, you would certainly get enough to enough to take you a bit further. I mean, I think it is probably questionable whether many people will use these for their main charging point. Certainly there are lots of faster options that are available in service stations and sort of, other places. Your other question was around what happens if you leave the car beyond its full charge. Yeah, I mean, that doesn't cause any technical problems.
I'm going to go to Jeff because he's hopping up and down here.
Well, I suppose there is an issue in terms of blocking access for people who would like to charge after you've completed charging. And I think some of the operators start levying a sort of charge once you reach full charge. Effectively, it's a penalty for lingering too long.
That was the reason for my question, actually, because I know that Melbourne are interested in this. It was raised the other night at the parish council meeting. But they have a local bylaw that says there's no overnight parking on their car park. So if someone came along in the evening to plug their car in, they would essentially go, if they didn't have a driveway, so to speak, they would then go into penalty clause, shall we say, when they came back the next morning. So those are the reasons I asked, because I think there are some wrinkles, if you like. Councillor Martin.
I just wondered whether you'd whether there's going to be a problem in terms of organisation for trusts and community trusts and so on in terms of getting planning permission, because I suspect that they would need planning permission unless it's perhaps attached to the building, if you're putting a post, a pillar or something, a charging point. Whereas parish councils, I think it's probably covered by the local authority permitted development, but for those, how long do you think it's going to take? Is it going to be a problem if you've got a 12-month limit on expenditure?
Yes, I'm really wishing Luke was here, because he would certainly be able to answer that question. I think I wasn't aware that planning permission would be required for them, but it is. But I can't be sure on that. I think that is something we'll just have to take away. But in terms of the 12 months, spending it within the 12 months, I mean, if there is a reason that it's going beyond that, then we're always flexible with that deadline. I mean, it's really just a kind of deadline to help move things along.
Brilliant. Thank you, Siobhan. John, do you need to add anything, or are you okay for us to go to the recommendation?
I'm fine. I'm fine with this. Yeah, I think it's a really good suggestion. It's something that we need to be doing, and I hope that this is taken up by other districts and also by the county as well, actually, because I'd like to start the county installing more EV charging points, for example, on their lampposts. So hopefully this might give them a bit of a kick to get on with this.
Fantastic. Thank you. Councillor Harvey, Jeff.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Of course, I'm not part of this committee. I'm just taking an interest as one of the vice chairs on the Climate Environment Committee. But I did have some other points just to feed in. I wondered whether there's a reason why and I might have misread this, this would be constrained to being village halls or sort of community areas, if you like. I mean, for example, in my village, the post office is quite interested in installing a charge point. So that's one point. Leading on to another point, it's interesting because hopefully everyone has seen the electric post office vans, but in our village, it's pretty much a local operation. We have, 2 or 3 local posters who do our village and perhaps some of the surrounding villages. They have to drive their van into Cambridge every night and then back again in the morning, specifically to charge it up. So I wonder if there's an opportunity to do something with Royal Mail here. I suppose the counter-argument is that will complicate things and Royal Mail should really sort themselves out, but it's just a point. Picking up on Peter Sanford's point, I do think there would be a lot of advantages from trying to sort of guide our parish councils and limit the number of people, sort of contractors bidding for this, because I think one of the issues is that there are so many people in this market at the moment that almost whenever you try and use a public charger, you've got a sort of 10 or 15 minute delay while you download their particular app, work out, how it all works. I mean, I think really the best system is the one where you just show it your charge card, and it's all done wirelessly. And that's how the one just a few hundred yards from the council offices here in Camborne works, but it doesn't seem to always work. So I do think a sort of toolkit of some kind of information that we could give to parish councils. I think parish councils really won't know where to start with this. I think I wondered whether this is viewed as a sort of revenue generating opportunity for parish councils, and do we need a sort of overarching policy on that? I mean, I think you have to be a sort of sensible compromise between raising some money for community funds and not making the charge so high that people won't use them. And the other thing, again, perhaps not going or trying to constrain the number of suppliers involved, I think, is maintenance, because I noticed that the National Trust at Wimpole have now got about 10 EV chargers, and they've actually got a solar farm and battery system to supply those, which is great. But the reliability is really quite poor, because I go there every week to do parkrun, and every week there are new ones that aren't working and other ones which weren't working the previous week which have now been repaired. So I think the overheads in maintaining charge points would obviously be much lower in aggregate if there were a limited number of suppliers involved in this. I think that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Would you like me to come back on some of those? Yeah, very interesting points there. Thank you for those, Councillor Harvey. I mean, a few points. First of all, so far as opening the grant to post offices and small businesses and such like, two thoughts there. One is that I think where there's a really good commercial opportunity, there are other possibilities in terms of how these can be funded. But I think as a general thing, what I would suggest is that we proceed with this for the rest of this current financial year, but that when we're looking towards what we'll do in next year and subsequent years, we look at that, and we look at the arguments around including a commercial organisation and not. And there'll be various considerations. I completely agree on your point that it's much easier where the system is that you just show your charge card, and that if you have proliferation of different app-based systems, that is not ideal. And I think that this very much needs to be part of the guidance that we provide parish councils in terms of their options. You mentioned a policy so far as revenue generation for parish councils, and I mean, we may be wrong, but I don't expect that these will, certainly in the near future, generate large sums of money. There are some costs in terms of maintenance costs that need to be covered, and so I think this. I think that's probably not something that we need to look at the moment. Again, you know, where there are really good commercial opportunities, it may be that a fast charger isn't the answer. You need a rapid charger, and some other organisations are sort of in this field and helping organisations to, you know, helping set those up. So those were the thoughts I had. I don't know if there are any specific points that you raised that you want me to come back on again.
No, through you, Chair, and thank you very much for that.
I've got a couple that's come out of it, actually, if I may. Jeff mentioned about the village post office and what have you, but is there anything stopping the parish council setting up the process and installing it wherever they like, as long as they have permission to do so? It doesn't have to be against a public building, but it is the parish council that's doing it. So I see in the notes, businesses are excluded at the moment and what have you, that's fine, what can't be funded. But if this is for the use by public, the parish council pay for it for the public to use just in another location away from their own village car park or whatever. Is that doable? And the other question, if I may, is I can't find in here what the average cost of one of these units is. So, 5,000 to 7,000. Thanks. I didn't see that.
Yeah, so I think the average cost is about 8,000 at the moment. In terms of where they're placed, the parish council would need to own that land, or I mean, if they didn't own it, I suppose there might be a possibility of some legal arrangement around it. It would certainly be a complicating factor.
Yeah, can I come in here? I think like we have with the community chest, you know, we have to be careful that to make sure that the asset that we're paying for is going to be available for the community, for as long as it exists. And we therefore have to make sure that the land on which it sits is basically owned by the parish council, or the parish council has a long lease on it, rather than the parish council putting it up somewhere where then within 6 months it has to be taken away because the land is sold and the new owner doesn't want it. So at the moment, I think we have to limit it to parish council owned land.
Okay, that's great. But just want to make sure that we're exploring everything and certainly saying it out loud. Right, Martin, please, Councillor Khan.
I think it's a very good idea, but I'm just wondering about longer term, how the funding, if you're going to continue this in future years, would the funding from the renewables fund be applicable to this, or is this not considered really a renewable investment? Because it depends on who you buy electricity from, for instance. What's the position about that?
So the current funding is from the Renewables Reserve. In terms of future funding, that is one possibility, but there are also some grants that I'm just trying. It's the Emma will be able to help me with the name of the grant. It's the Levelling Up money. So there is a possibility of it being funded through that. We'll certainly look at all options.
Emma, did you have that? Is that the right name of it that Siobhan just said?
I was going to say is it OZEV? No, OLED. No, oh gosh, I can't remember what it's called now. Is it ULEV now? What's it called? The ultra. OLED?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it wasn't that one I was thinking of. There is some money that has we've recently bid for in association with the other district councils. It's government money. It's quite a large pot of money, and we're working out how to spend it. And the name of it just escapes me at the moment. But I know that the economic development team and I think some others from sustainable communities are looking at that.
Okay, thank you very much. Jeff?
Yes, thank you, Chair. To talk about my own village again, hoping that it might be typical of other situations, but around our village hall, which I think would be, where the obvious place to put it would be, the only car parking actually belongs to the cricket club, who are notoriously covetous of their car park, and I don't suppose would be sympathetic to this at all. The only option I could think that could work in Abington would be a charging post kind of outside the village institute, and I suppose that would involve putting a sort of conduit under the pavement to sort of reach it, or possibly one of these pavement slots that they're using in Oxford, so that the charging post itself is on parish council land, but that you can safely guide it to on street parking. I wondered if that's going to be at all possible. Thank you.
So that would, I imagine that would bring in some complications in terms of the county council needing to give authority for that. But it's something that I think we need to look into. I don't think there's anything about the way that the grant is set up which would prevent that being the case. I mean, we're certainly, if that works, then I can't see why not.
Thanks, Siobhan. Right, okay, gang, we've had a good go at this, I think. On page 1 of your agenda, you've got the recommendations. So if you're all happy to go to the recommendations, we'll go there. And it's recommended the Grants Committee, Advisory Committee, A, reviews the proposed structure and the funding criteria for the grants set out in appendices A, B, and also agrees a recommendation to the lead cabinet member for finance to approve the establishment of the electrical vehicle charge point grant. So are we in agreement, disagreement? That's a unanimous agreement. Thank you very much. Kira, if you can make a note. And John, you have a green tick in that one. That's great. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you.
And we go now to agenda item number 5. This is the community chest funding applications. Page 13 of your agenda to 24. Emma, is this you?
That is, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so we have no applications this month, but this paper is on the cost of living crisis adaptations to the criteria.
Yep.
So a little bit of background. So we know that obviously the cost of living crisis is having a major impact on individuals, families and businesses. This includes people with moderate to good incomes, as well as those already in hardship. We know that the increase in day-to-day bills, especially energy and food, is pushing those struggling deeper into hardship and poverty. Those unable to keep themselves warm or feed themselves sufficiently may then develop health conditions, which could then present more problems for our health services. So a motion was agreed at full council on Thursday, the 22nd of September, to declare a cost of living crisis. And one element of the motion was to ask the Grants Advisory Committee to review the Community Chest Grant Scheme to consider having applications that demonstrate not only the wellbeing benefits to their community, but also support for those on low incomes, and make recommendations to the lead Cabinet Member for Resources or Cabinet as appropriate. Therefore, the purpose of this paper is to propose time-limited alterations to the criteria of the Community Chest Grant, so that projects that provide benefit to residents and communities affected by the cost of living crisis can be considered. So the Grants Advisory Committee is asked to make recommendations to the lead Cabinet Member for Resources with regard to the following 4 points. First one is expanding the criteria to allow parish and town councils of any size to bid for community chest grants that provide a benefit to those affected by the cost of living crisis. Second one is expanding the criteria to allow applications for revenue costs or overheads, for example, salaries, rent, advertising and promotional materials, to be included for all projects that provide a benefit to those affected by the cost of living crisis. Third point, including a £20,000 ring-fenced sum for applications referred to in the previous two recommendations. And it's proposed that this £20,000 would come from the integrated care system funding, which South Cambs District Council is administering, and which must be committed by the end of March 2023. And that's for the purposes of delivering projects that provide a benefit to those affected by the cost of living crisis. And then the fourth point is reviewing these changes to the criteria at the end of March 2023, with a view to assessing whether continued funding is needed to support the cost of living work, or whether the changes to the criteria should revert back to the current position. Regarding the extra £20,000, this ring fence funding, like I said, it comes from a successful funding bid made by the council to the integrated care system, and the total award being £220,000 to develop a range of projects to mitigate the impact of rising fuel prices on health inequality. So communications and any decision to amend the criteria would include a press release and all other usual comms channels, including social media, direct communication with parish and town councils and community groups and organisations. And just a few examples that we've come up with are projects like repair cafes, time banking projects, lunch clubs, community support initiatives that provide food, activities and support services, the setting up or running of a group or charity where people can obtain free furniture, clothing, food and toys, and establishing or building the capacity of food hubs, food banks or community fridges. Guidance notes and criteria, including the changes that I've just talked about, have been highlighted in grey in Appendix A, and this is to reflect the recommendations in this paper. All other criteria, such as the upper funding limit, monitoring requirements and the need to return unspent funds, would remain in place. And if the committee reject these recommendations, we would welcome any alternatives to support the delivery of the commitment made at full council on the 22nd of September. Yes, and I welcome any questions.
Thanks, Emma. It's later, please.
Sorry. Okay, so I just wondered if this is for the whole of Cambridgeshire, is 20,000 enough? £20,000, is it enough to spread it around all of Cambridgeshire for?
I think this is until the end of the financial, it's until the end of this financial year. So I suppose, like I said, we would be reviewing it because we're obviously coming up to the first applications that we might potentially get would be in November. So we just got November, December, January, February, March, so about 5 months worth. So I suppose it's something that we would have to sort of review and see where we are really.
Thank you.
Oh.
Sorry, do you mean South Cambridgeshire, Councillor, or Cambridgeshire? We're talking about South Cambridgeshire. The 20,000 refers to South Cambridgeshire, not Cambridgeshire.
Though I feel it's a big area, and you know, things like fuel and all sorts, food is going up so much. It's a large area. 20,000. I'm just wondering if it will be enough. That's all. I agree with everything, but that's the question I'm asking.
But this, okay, but this is for setup costs and for setting up schemes. It's not for actually purchasing goods and, well, it's not for purchasing food. I mean, yeah, I'm not sure. what I'm not sure if you read the report, it's not exactly for what you're thinking it's for, I think.
Okay, then that's good.
Okay. We're looking at other, I mean, obviously there are things like slow cookers and white goods that could be purchased, but this is really about the setting up the capital costs and maintaining the revenue costs of running a scheme rather than actually purchasing, things like food and clothing or
So
paying
just
for fuel.
one thing to clarify. We are setting up a community warm hub. So if from this, would we be able to purchase food, or that would have to just continue from donations? So are you
I think the
being...
setting up of the warm hub, comes from a different pot of money. It comes from a pot of money that ACRE has.
Okay.
So you should,
okay, understood.
yeah?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, it's not warm hubs is not part of this as such. It comes out of a different pot of money.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Anita. John, just a quick clarification. You said it's not for running. I just want to make really certain through Emma, if I may. On page 13 of the agenda, Emma, on the recommendations, bullet point 2, it says there, expanding the criteria to allow application for revenue or overheads, for example, salaries, rent, advertising, promotional materials.
Yeah.
So, as John rightly says, it doesn't talk about, for argument's sake, a lunch club. It doesn't say that you're buying in the food or anything, but it might help contribute or pay towards someone to run it.
Exactly.
Would that be right?
Yes.
Or the rent, or the cost of, the room, etc.
Okay, thanks, John. Right, Martin.
It was basically the same point I was going to go on with, but I think you need to be clear if you're really not going to cover food or food costs, for instance, because I would regard food in a structure which is providing food to people, not as a capital cost, but as a revenue cost, because it's a cost which you're spending. So if you're not going to cover that, I think you need to make it clear in the that isn't covered in the actual regulations associated with it.
We can sort of clear that up, yes, and put that in the criteria, of course.
Well, that's quite an important point, I think, actually. So, I mean, if we were obviously to make our recommendations as asked to do today, would we make that recommendation for approval with the criteria that we're actually laying down, that make it absolutely blindingly clear that it's not for revenue for food. This is or electricity. Yeah. Okay, Peter.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Page 16, paragraph 13 has a list of 6 bullet points, which I assume would be the criteria we'd use for assessing any applications. The 3rd bullet point actually says low-cost meals for those in need. So if it's not going to cover food, that needs to be rewritten.
Okay. Yeah. Can amend.
It does actually. That's a really good point, actually, Emma. People picked up here, lunch clubs, low-cost meals for those in need. So that gives the impression you're getting cheap grub.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. So the actual sort of, the room hire, if they needed to buy potentially sort of plates and things like that, and all that kind of stuff, sort of capital purchases, that would be included. But yes, we can amend that to make it a bit clearer and remove that section. Yes.
John, just if I may, thank you, Emma. Going back to Sunita's point with regards to, is this enough? If where we're looking at this paper here now, and some of the questions coming from colleagues to you through us and Emma, is there any possibility of a small top-up with this that would almost, if you like, leave some of these comments and bullets in place, that there could be, the main bulk of the application, for argument's sake, would be for setup, etc., to do what's actually on the tin, so to speak. But then there might be a small proportion of that that money that could be used to purchase some food items and stuff, so that can start the process off, if you're with me. Because at the moment, what we're saying, or rather what you're saying, is that this is not for the provision of food, it's to set up. There is going to be an issue, if, for argument's sake, on that page 16, paragraph 13, the bullet point 6, establish or building the capacity of food hubs, food banks or community fridges. That's great. I'll put a community fridge in, but it won't be anything in it until we pay for stuff to go in it and then start the process off. So I just wonder if there's any leeway in the calculation for the funding, whether some could be added to the fund of the 20,000, make it slightly higher, or whether or not we could work within that 20,000 to allow a small proportion of the grant application to allow for foodstuffs. Thanks.
I think that's very difficult, Chair. I mean, you know, how long's a piece of string? How much food does someone assess they need to start off something? This is a partnership. I mean, this isn't. We're not coming in to completely fund 100% a scheme. We expect the community to be also putting something into this. Now, you know, we are picking up the big ticket items to enable something to be set up. And I think it's fair in those circumstances that those communities that are taking advantage of this are able to meet us by at least contributing something. And I think that needs to be, because they know that you know, they can judge, for example, how much food they require, that is their input into this. You know, we're not here to provide, we don't have the resource to provide subsidized food for everybody. You know, we just do not have that ability to do that. We don't have the money, the open-ended commitment to provide people with food. You know, that is something that, you know, we must look to others to support us with. But at least what we're doing here is enabling people who want to set up a food bank or a lunch club the ability to have, you know, a grant to help them with those, as I say, main items to enable them to run it. I don't think it's not. I think it's fair for us to then expect, you know, people to meet us and provide, you know, the cost of the actual food, etc., or the electricity, to provide that themselves. Because otherwise, you know, it would certainly cost more than 20,000, and we don't have more than 20,000. You know, we are ourselves in difficult circumstances. You know, inflation, etc., interest rates, etc., are causing enormous squeeze on this council's finances. And you know, what we are saying is, look, even in our difficult circumstances, we're able to come and help you, but we can't do it all. I'm sorry, we just do not have the resources, the financial resources to pick up the, you know, that's basically for government to sort out, not for local government. And what we're saying here is that we want to help and we will help, but we can't do it all. And we must be a partnership to deliver this. We can't do it on our own. We don't have the financial resources to do it on our own.
Okay, thanks. I mean, that's really clear, and that's not a problem. I just think that colleagues, I'll just quickly say this before I go to Sue, but I think colleagues have expressed concerns that the wrong message is being given within the paper. And perhaps so we just need to be really clear about what we will and won't do. Okay, over to you, Sue.
We've had quite a bit rounding discussion, and perhaps the first things I was going to say have already been taken into account, but I find my first impression was that this new grant was, I couldn't find how much we were actually saying we were going to give. I read paragraph 14 as, that's the community chest, we're continuing to give 2,000. It didn't say that the new grant was going to be 2,000. And I think that needs spelling out, if you see what I mean. To me, there were two grants being talked about, under 13 and 14, two different criteria. And therefore, under 13, it would be good to see that say there will only be 2,000 per project. The second thought that I had was, yes, it's only going to run 5 months, but 2,000 into 20,000 is only 10 projects. And we have a lot more villages and village groups than that, and we may be slightly overwhelmed by the number of applications. And I was going to ask, before John started his last conversation, that under 8 it says that there was £220,000 put into the ICS fund, and I wondered whether we knew what that has currently produced, apart from allowing us to have 20,000 for this new grant, and whether that might have a little underspend on it, and we might actually find another pot or two to encourage more than 10 applications.
Emma, put your hand up, thanks.
Yeah, just in relation to your first point about how much could be applied for, point 15 of the main report, it says that all other criteria, including the upper funding limit, monitoring requirements, and the need to return unspent funds would remain in place. So it's as it is, but we're just kind of broadening the actual criteria to include these projects. And this is actually, like we said, it's a ring-fenced amount within there. So I hope that answers that bit.
Yep, that's good. Thank you for clearing that up. Do we have any other points, Martin?
Coming back to the food element again, it's just a thought that often, I mean, presumably a lot of the food will be from donations. I mean, that's these schemes tend to be like that. And when you get donations of food, you tend to get certain types of things and not others. So you may find that you have a shortage or difficulty getting some form. And there might be a case for saying small proportions of the funding was allowable for food that you couldn't get from other sources. But I also realised it might be difficult to enforce that. But it's just a thought that you might think about having some flexibility, a little bit of flexibility in that, to think about that. But I understand with the limited resources you've got, that may just not be possible. It's just a concern.
Okay, thanks, Martin. Emma?
I know that communities are very supportive of these, and I think, like we say, a lot of donations do come from individuals. And also, just like to note that a lot of supermarkets actually donate surplus food as well. So I don't think that would be a major problem. I do know that I think, was it Morrison's in Camborne are very supportive of local sort of initiatives as well. So yeah, I think that probably, and also if you've got a community fridge as well, food can be kept for longer as well. So we don't just have the sort of non-perishables, we have, have a mixture of food as well for a lot of these initiatives.
Great stuff. Okay, thank you. So we've had a load of questions. I think we've put John on the spot enough for the moment, but thank you, John. To be fair, we had to ask the questions, I think, and that was, and it obviously has picked up a few little wrinkles in the documentation that could be tweaked. that's okay. So if it's okay with everybody, we can go to the recommendations. Now, we've got 4 recommendations. Would you like to take them individually or one at a time? I'm minded to say take them all at once. You've read them. If you like, I'll go over them again. Would that be helpful to go over them again?
I think we can all read.
Yep, or you can all read. Thanks. What would you like to do, gang?
No, there's nobody there.
They're now avidly rereading the recommendations. That's okay.
No, it's okay, Jose. When it all goes quiet, we get a picture of an empty room because the camera, because you're all sitting on one side, the camera focuses on the opposite side. It looks like there's no one there.
Well, I think what I'm going to do then is I'm going to leave my mic on and I'll still come closer and we'll dance or something. Right. I'm looking at the gang in the shadows, should I say? I think we're going to take them all together if that's okay. We've made our points very clear and we've had very clear answers. Yeah. This is for a short period until March of 23, so that's obviously the end of the financial year. So my recommendation to the group, if you agree with me, is that we accept the 4 bullet points under recommendations on page 13 and the top of page 14, which is the 4th bullet, for all of those recommendations as listed. Are we in agreement?
Yes.
It's an answer yes for unanimous. Thank you both, John and Emma, for being so candid. And I thank the gang down here for putting you on the spot, which is even better. And we'll move on then. So I think actually that was the last piece of business. So the date of the next meeting will be 25th of November. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Yeah, much obliged. Have a safe trip home for those who aren't at home, and for those who are, stay safe. Keep warm.